In our reading lesson, we're going to begin by reviewing quickly what main idea and key details are.
The main idea of a story is like a table. You can't have the tabletop without the legs holding it up. In the same way, you cannot have a main idea of a story without supporting details. Feel free to choose one or more than one of these stories to review main idea.
Today, boys and girls, we're going to talk about our country, our government, and we're going to talk about this word values. A value is sort of like a principle. It's something you believe in. It's an idea that you believe in.
Today we will be reading from a book on Mayan called Democratic Values. With your teacher, discuss what you might think these 6 words mean.
We have already been talking about the words liberty, equality, and rights. We already know about some of these words. We're going to go into a breakout room, and I want you to think about what these other words might mean, like values, civic duties, and democratic. What do you think these words probably mean if we're talking about our government and the rights and responsibilities that we have? I'm going to send you into a breakout room, and you are going to share what you think these words probably mean.
What is a democratic value? During election time, you may hear people talking about values. But what are values? A value is a belief that is based on what you think is right. For example, let's say someone values honesty. What does honesty mean to you? Imagine it's raining outside. You spend school recess running around and having fun. When you come back in, your shoes are covered in mud. You forget to wipe them on the mat and track brown mud all over your classroom. Your teacher says that the person who made the mess needs to help clean it up. You know it was you, but you don't want to clean the floor. What do? If you value honesty, you tell the truth about what you did. This value is important to you. If you do something wrong at school, be honest and tell your teacher.
The word value means something that we believe because we know it's the right thing to do. When people make laws, they should be thinking about the values they believe in. When you are 18 or older and you get the chance to vote for somebody in our government, you will be thinking about your values, what you think is the right thing to do. Today, we're going to watch a video and we're going to see how Mr. McKinney can think about the main idea and key details using this text.
What is the main idea of this passage? Well, first, let's look at the title. The title says, "What is a democratic value?" So I know the main idea has something to do with a democratic value. Let's look at the first sentence. During election time, you hear people talking about values. That doesn't really tell us too much. Let's look at the last sentence. This value is important to you. That doesn't really tell us a lot either, but it does tell us that values are important. So the main idea can be anywhere, and there can be more than one main idea. So let's look for repeated words. I see the word honesty, honesty, honest, and honesty. And from what I remember from reading this passage, I remember that it talks about how important it is to be honest. And it stated that honesty is a good value to have. So honesty must be a good democratic value. So in a complete sentence, I could write, the main idea of this passage talks about how honesty is a good democratic value. Or you could say it is an important democratic value. There are many ways you could write a main idea. But now we have to highlight a supporting detail. If the whole story is about how honesty is a good, important democratic value, a supporting detail has to have something to do with how honesty is an important democratic value. Let's look at this sentence. Imagine it's raining outside. Does that have anything to do with honesty being a good democratic value? No, it does not. So that's just a detail in the story. It's not a supporting detail. Let's look at this sentence. If you value honesty, you tell the truth about what you did. This value is important to you. I think this sentence talks about how honesty is an important democratic value. So this would be a good sentence to highlight for a supporting detail.
Today, boys and girls, we are going to talk about other values that are in our country. As Mr. McKinney said, one example is being honest. Lots of us value being honest. Today, we're going to explore more of those values together. Please join me on Seesaw. Click Activities, Assign to Class folder, Red ELA. Our task today says main idea, democratic values. Go ahead and find this and open it up.
What did you say go to?
We are in our task for ELA. Let me help you get there again. Okay, when you open your task, you will notice that there is a big red stop sign on slide 4. That's because we're going to finish this task tomorrow. So when you get to the stop sign, you need to stop because we're going to come back to this tomorrow. Today, we're only going to look at the first few slides together. On slide number 1, here is another page of text from our story on Mayan called Democratic Values. The first one Mr. McKinney did for us. He listened to the text and we talked about what a value is. It's something we believe in because we think it's the right thing to do. So honesty is an example of a democratic value. But I'm guessing if you're like me, there's other things that we value. There's other things that are important to us. Honesty is one of them. Now we're going to learn about a second one called liberty. I want you to take 2 minutes to listen to the text on slide number 1 and think about what is liberty. Is it something that you value? Do you think it's something that our country values? Your job for 2 minutes is to listen to the liberty text by yourself. You may do that now. Remember, we are focused on values in our country and government. One value is being honest. We already talked about that value. The second value is liberty. So what is liberty? Let's listen to the text again together, and then we will talk about what liberty means.
Liberty. Liberty is an important democratic value. Liberty means freedom. In the United States, you have the freedom to believe what you want. You have the freedom to choose what religion to follow. You have the freedom to form your own ideas and opinions. People attended a protest in Washington, D.C. You are also free to share your ideas with others. You can write what you think in a blog. You can go to a protest and stand up against things you disagree with. Other people have these freedoms too. It's important to let people follow their own beliefs, even if they are different from yours. Protesters stood outside the White House in 2019. The idea of liberty goes back to when this nation was founded. Before the United States was a country, it was a colony of Great Britain. American colonists wanted to separate from Great Britain. They wanted their own country. They didn't want to be ruled by a king. As a result, colonists fought against the British in the Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. The colonists won. Early leaders wrote down values they wanted people in our society to follow. Our early leaders wrote down values they wanted in society. These democratic values are in important documents, such as the U.S. Constitution.
So let's talk about some of these values. We heard lots of things in the text that we've been learning about, like how our country did not want to be ruled by England and the king, so we made our own country. We established the 13 colonies. Then, when we became our own community, our own country, we had to come up with rules. So our founders, the people who made our country, they wrote down some rules to follow. We call that the Constitution. So we're talking about values, things we think and believe are important. Honesty is one. Liberty is a second value. So what is liberty? Who can share with the class about something they know about liberty or heard from our text about liberty? What is liberty? What is this thing that we value in our country? Go ahead, Gloria.
It means freedom.
Liberty means freedom. So our country, our government values, they believe that being honest is important and having freedom is important. Let's look at the text together and let's see if we can find some examples of what freedoms we have. Today, boys and girls, we've already been talking about some freedoms. We heard some freedoms in the brain pop. Let's go to slide 2 and look at the text together. Please click on slide 2 with me. Gloria has now shared that liberty means freedom. I'm going to highlight that in my text. Liberty means freedom. I want you to look for examples in the text. What type of freedoms do we have? How do we have freedom in our country with our government? I want you to look for one example of freedom we have. Let's start with Haley. What example of freedom and liberty did you find in our text?
The freedom, hold on. So the freedom is the freedom to believe what you want.
Absolutely. Right here in the first paragraph, it says you have the freedom to believe what you want. In our country, we value freedom and liberty. That means you can believe what you want to believe. Ashley, what's an example of liberty you see in the text? Ashley, do you have an example of a freedom or liberty in the text?
Oh, liberty. It says they didn't want to be ruled by a king.
Yes. So we talked about how our country used to be ruled by England and their king, but now we don't have a king. We have a president because we said we're not going to be a part of that country anymore. We're making our own. That's a freedom we have. Thank you. Landon, what's a liberty you see in the text?
They said in the text you also are free to share your ideas with others.
You are free to share your ideas with others. I see that as a huge freedom. In some countries, you cannot share your ideas with other people. But in this country, we have that right. We have that liberty. It's a freedom that belongs to us people. Day, what's a freedom or liberty that we value in this country?
You have the freedom to choose what religion to follow.
Yes, you have the freedom to choose what religion to follow. Remember, religion is faith, how you worship, what you believe, how you go to church, how you pray. So we learned yesterday about a group of people called the Amish people. And their religion, they had some beliefs about when to go to school, when not to go to school. So in this country, we value liberty. We value freedom. And here are lots of examples of how we have freedom in this country. We don't have a king. We can share our ideas with others. We can choose what religion to believe. We can choose what we want to believe with other things, not just religion. Awesome ideas. Boys and girls, let's talk about what your task is today. On slide 2, I want you to finish. I want you to tell me what the main idea is by typing in this box. The main idea of this text is, I want you to tell me one sentence. That's your first job for your independent work time. Then you need to go to slide 3. Slide 3 asks you to think of 2 questions about this text. We have read the text together. On slide 1, you can listen to it again. And I want you to be the teacher. I want you to ask 2 questions about our liberty text. Think of a question that you want to know. You will type your questions right next to questions 1 and 2. Then, boys and girls, you need to go find the answer. Go find the answer in the text and tell me the answer beneath your question. Okay, whoa, that got very large. So really quick review. On slide 2, you're going to tell me the main idea. On slide 3, you're going to ask 2 questions about our liberty text and tell me the answer. Find the answer and write it down. That's it for today. Remember, slide 4 says stop. We're stopping and we'll finish this tomorrow.